If you are over 60 and you take vitamin B12 every morning, stop. Before you take your next dose, you need to watch this. Because if you are also on metformin for blood sugar or a PPI like omeprazole for acid reflux, two of the most commonly prescribed medications for people your age, the B12 you are taking right now may be silently raising your risk of stroke. Not lowering it, raising it. And the most frightening part? Your blood test will look completely normal. Your doctor has no reason to flag it. You feel fine, and that's exactly why this keeps happening. To people who are doing everything right. I'm Dr. Michael Adeyemi, and I'm a cardiologist. I'm not here to sell you a supplement. I'm not here to scare you off a medication your doctor prescribed. I'm here because there is a specific, documented, biological chain reaction that happens when B12 meets either of these two drugs inside a body over 60. By the time this video is over, you will know exactly which two medications create this danger, why your standard blood panel completely misses it, and the 4 precise changes that can reverse the damage, starting today. Stay right here. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from and whether you're currently on B12. If you are, type yes in comments. I read every single one. Now let me show you exactly what's happening inside your body. Segment 1, the science setup, why B12 becomes a problem. Let's start at the beginning, because I think a lot of confusion around this topic comes from one very understandable assumption. If something is good for you, more of it must be better. And for most of your life, B12 has only ever been presented as something you need more of after 60. And that's true. The science is solid. B12 deficiency in seniors contributes to fatigue, nerve damage, memory decline, and yes, even heart disease. So why on earth would I, a cardiologist, be standing here warning you about it? Because the danger isn't the B12 itself. The danger is what happens to B12 inside a body that is taking certain medications. Medications that change how B12 is absorbed, transported, and processed, and what gets created when that process breaks down. Here's the molecule you need to understand. Homocysteine. Homocysteine is an amino acid. Your body makes it naturally as a byproduct of normal metabolism. Think of it as a kind of metabolic exhaust. In a healthy system, your body uses B12, B6, and folate to convert homocysteine into useful compounds and clear it efficiently from your bloodstream. The system is elegant. The system works beautifully when all the parts are in place. But here's the problem that hits seniors specifically. After the age of 60, your body's ability to absorb and properly utilize nutrients, including B12, begins to decline. Your stomach produces less intrinsic factor, a protein that acts as B12's escort into your bloodstream. Your kidneys filter things more slowly. Your gut processes things differently. Now add a medication that further disrupts that system, and what you get is this. B12 floods into your blood in a form it cannot be properly processed. The homocysteine conversion pathway gets jammed, and homocysteine builds up. Elevated homocysteine doesn't feel like anything. There's no headache, no tingling, no alarm bell. But inside your arteries, it's doing something that a research team at Johns Hopkins described as chronic endothelial injury. The slow, persistent scraping and inflaming of the inner lining of your blood vessels. Healthy arteries flex. They expand and contract with every heartbeat like a perfectly maintained garden hose. Arteries that have been bathed in elevated homocysteine for months or years begin to stiffen. The walls become rougher. Plaque finds it easier to adhere. And unstable plaques, the ones that break loose instead of staying put, become far more likely. That is how strokes happen in people who never showed any warning signs. And now, I need to tell you about the 2 medications that create this problem. Segment 2, medication number 1, metformin. If you have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes in the last decade, there is a very strong chance metformin is in your daily routine. It is one of the most prescribed medications in the United States. Full stop. It is effective. It is relatively well tolerated. And for blood sugar management, it does its job. But there is a side effect of long-term metformin use that a staggering number of patients are never clearly counseled about. And that gap in communication has real consequences. Metformin, taken consistently over time, we're talking years, not weeks, significantly impairs the function of intrinsic factor receptors in the gut. These are the receptors responsible for binding B12 and pulling it into your bloodstream. Without efficient receptor function, B12 absorption drops. It doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, quiet. And because it's gradual, it often goes unnoticed until a blood test eventually catches a low B12 reading. At that point, the logical response is supplement with B12. And doctors do recommend it. That recommendation makes perfect sense on the surface. But here is where the story gets complicated. When you supplement with B12, while your intrinsic factor system is compromised, the B12 you're taking in large doses doesn't follow the normal processing pathway. A significant portion enters the blood in a form the body cannot efficiently convert and use. And that excess, poorly processed B12 disrupts the very homocysteine clearing system it's supposed to support. Your blood test says your B12 is fine. Your blood test says your B12 is actually high, and so your doctor has no reason to question the supplement. But your homocysteine, which wasn't tested because it almost never is on a standard panel, is silently climbing. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Gerald. Gerald was 68 years old, retired engineer, methodical, detail-oriented man. When he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 6 years ago, he did everything right. He adjusted his diet, he started walking, and he took every medication and supplement exactly as directed. He added a 1,000 microgram B12 tablet to his morning routine because he'd read that metformin depletes B12 and he wanted to stay ahead of it. What nobody told Gerald, and what nobody told his pharmacist either, was that 1,000 micrograms of the wrong form of B12 in a gut that metformin had been quietly compromising for years was creating a metabolic burden his cardiovascular system was silently paying for. Gerald came to my attention after a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, what people sometimes call a mini stroke. He recovered fully, but when we pulled a complete panel including homocysteine, his number was elevated well beyond what we would ever want to see. His B12 was perfect on paper. His homocysteine told the real story. How many of you right now are in a situation similar to Gerald's? You're doing everything you were told to do. The labs look fine. But the one number that could actually tell us something about your cardiovascular risk is sitting untested in your bloodstream. Type Gerald in the comments if this is hitting close to home. If you are new to my channel, press that like button and subscribe to the channel. It only takes 3 seconds. It will help more seniors to find that video. Segment 3, medication number 2, proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. The second medication category is one I want you to pay very close attention to, because it is arguably even more overlooked in this conversation. Proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. You know them by names like omeprazole, pantoprazole, lansoprazole. They're prescribed for acid reflux, GERD, gastritis, and stomach ulcer protection. And after the age of 60, as the digestive system shifts and acid reflux becomes more common, PPI use increases dramatically. Here is what most people taking a PPI every morning have never been told. Stomach acid is not just an inconvenience your body produces to give you heartburn. Stomach acid is a critical part of the nutrient extraction process. Specifically, your body needs an acidic environment in the stomach to free B12 from the food you eat. B12 in food is bound to proteins. Your stomach acid breaks those protein bonds and releases the B12 so it can be absorbed. When you reduce stomach acid with a PPI over months and years, you significantly reduce your body's ability to extract B12 from food. A landmark study published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, compared 25,956 patients diagnosed with B12 deficiency against 184,199 without it, and found that patients who used PPIs continuously for 2 or more years had a 65% increased risk of developing vitamin B12 deficiency. That study came out of Kaiser Permanente's research division and remains one of the largest population-based analyses on this exact question. So again, logically, doctors recommend a B12 supplement. And again, the same problem emerges on the downstream side. But with PPIs, there is an additional wrinkle that makes the situation even more complex and, frankly, more dangerous. Many long-term PPI users develop what's called rebound acid hypersecretion. This is a well-documented compensatory response, studied in clinical trials including a randomized controlled study published in the journal Gastroenterology, where the body, after prolonged acid suppression, actually ramps up acid production above pretreatment levels when the medication is missed, reduced, or eventually stopped. The American Gastroenterological Association now formally advises physicians to warn patients about this effect before discontinuing PPIs. That rebound window, whenever a dose is skipped or the medication is tapered, creates an unpredictable stomach environment. B12 processing becomes inconsistent, and inconsistent B12 processing leads to erratic homocysteine management. Some days the system clears it adequately, some days it doesn't. The cumulative result of that inconsistency, over time, is elevated average homocysteine. An elevated average homocysteine, month after month, does the same arterial damage we talked about, even if each individual day looks manageable. Think of it like this. If you scratch a piece of wood once, it heals. If you scratch the same spot every few days for 2 years, you eventually create a groove that can't be ignored. That's what erratic homocysteine management does to the inner lining of your blood vessels. I want to ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer it honestly, just for yourself. When was the last time your doctor asked you both whether you were taking a PPI and whether you were supplementing with B12, and then discussed what those two things together might be doing inside your body? If that conversation has never happened, you are not alone. It is one of the most common gaps I see between what the research tells us and what actually happens in a standard 15-minute appointment. Segment 4, the homocysteine crisis, why nobody is testing it. Let's talk about why homocysteine has become what I call the most important number most seniors have never heard of. Cholesterol gets tested, blood pressure gets checked, blood sugar is monitored, thyroid levels are reviewed, but homocysteine, which multiple major cardiovascular research institutions, including the Cleveland Clinic and the American Heart Association, have identified as an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, almost never appears on a standard blood panel. The reason is not conspiratorial. It's practical. Homocysteine requires a separate, specific test order. It's not automatically included. It costs a little extra. And because most doctors weren't trained to routinely order it, it simply doesn't get ordered. But here is what the research tells us about what you're missing when it goes untested. A landmark meta-analysis published in the BMJ, pooling data from dozens of genetic and prospective studies across multiple countries, found that for every 5 micromole per liter increase in homocysteine above normal, the risk of ischemic heart disease rose by 32% and stroke risk by 59%. A subsequent large meta-analysis reviewed in the Mayo Clinic proceedings, drawing on 26 independent studies, found most of them reported a 20 to 50% elevation in coronary heart disease risk for that same 5-unit increase. And a 2022 systematic review confirmed a roughly 22% higher risk of coronary heart disease per 5 micromole per liter rise. The science is consistent across decades and across continents. Normal homocysteine is generally considered below 15 micromole per liter. Elevated is 15 to 30. Dangerously elevated is above 30. Research from the Framingham Heart Study, one of the most comprehensive long-running cardiovascular studies in history, found that a significant portion of adults over 65 had homocysteine levels above the safe threshold, and most of them had no idea. And here's the mechanism that makes it specifically dangerous for the heart and brain. First, elevated homocysteine triggers oxidative stress in the arterial wall. Essentially, it generates a low-grade chemical burn on the inside of your blood vessels. Second, it directly impairs nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide is the molecule your blood vessels use to stay flexible and dilated. Without adequate nitric oxide, arteries become stiffer and blood pressure climbs. Third, and this is the one that keeps cardiologists like me up at night, elevated homocysteine makes existing plaques unstable. A plaque that was sitting quietly, not blocking much blood flow, can become far more likely to rupture and send a clot racing toward the brain when it's sitting in an inflamed, homocysteine-damaged arterial environment. This is the explanation for strokes in people who had perfect imaging results 6 months prior. The plaque was small, but the environment made it a time bomb. If you are over 60, on metformin or a PPI, and supplementing with B12, and you have never had a homocysteine test, I would like you to write down 3 letters. HCY, that is the test code. Take it to your doctor's office. Ask for it by name. That one test could give you information that changes everything. Segment 5, the solution. Smarter B12, not less B12. Now, and I want to be very clear about this, the answer to everything I've shared with you today is not to stop taking B12. That would create its own serious problem. B12 deficiency after 60 is real, it's damaging, and it accelerates cognitive decline and nerve damage in ways that are sometimes irreversible. I am not here to take a beneficial supplement away from you. I am here to help you take it correctly. Because the difference between B12 that protects you and B12 that quietly works against you comes down to 4 specific factors. And once you understand these 4 things, you will never look at a B12 bottle the same way again. Factor 1, the form. Turn over your B12 bottle right now. Look at the active ingredient. If it says cyanocobalamin, I want you to understand what that means. Cyanocobalamin is the synthetic lowest cost form of B12. It is the most common form in grocery store supplements. And for a younger, healthy gut with no medication interference, it works reasonably well. But cyanocobalamin requires your body to run it through multiple conversion steps before it becomes the active form your cells can actually use. In a gut compromised by metformin or suppressed by a PPI, those conversion steps are unreliable. The form you want is methylcobalamin. It is already in the biologically active state. Your body does not need to convert it. It goes directly to work. Here's what the research actually shows about why this matters. Studies have found that cyanocobalamin is excreted through urine at nearly 3 times the rate of methylcobalamin, meaning your body holds onto methylcobalamin significantly better. And because methylcobalamin bypasses the conversion steps that a compromised gut may not complete reliably, it delivers active B12 more consistently to where it's needed. For seniors on metformin or PPIs, that difference in retention and bioavailability is exactly the kind of edge that matters. This one switch, from cyanocobalamin to methylcobalamin, is perhaps the single most impactful change most seniors can make today. Factor 2, the dose. Many B12 supplements sold today are dosed at 1,000 micrograms, 2,500 micrograms, even 5,000 micrograms. These numbers exist because manufacturers assume a large percentage will be poorly absorbed and compensate with excess. But when absorption is compromised, flooding the system with a massive dose doesn't solve the absorption problem. It creates an overload of poorly processed B12 in the bloodstream, which, as we discussed, can worsen the homocysteine burden. A more intelligent dose of 250 to 500 micrograms of methylcobalamin, taken consistently, provides the body with an amount it can actually work with. It's not about how much you swallow, it's about how much your body can genuinely process and use. Factor 3, the supporting nutrients. B12 does not manage homocysteine alone. The homocysteine conversion cycle requires B6 and folate working alongside B12 as cofactors. When one is high and the others are low, the cycle stalls. Think of it like a 3-legged stool: B12, B6, and folate. Pull any one leg out and the whole thing falls. A quality B complex or a dedicated supplement combining all three gives your homocysteine conversion pathway everything it needs to function as it should. Factor 4, the timing. If you are on a PPI, the timing of your B12 relative to your medication matters more than most people realize. Taking your B12 supplement several hours after your PPI dose, when its acid suppression effect has partially worn off, allows for a more stable stomach environment and more consistent absorption. Separately, if you're on metformin, some research suggests that taking B12 with calcium may partially support the impaired receptor function that metformin causes. This is worth a specific conversation with your physician. Segment 6, a story of recovery, Eleanor's journey. I want to tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 72 years old, a retired nurse, which in some ways made her story even more striking. She knew medicine. She had spent 30 years helping patients understand their health. And yet, when it came to her own supplements, she had fallen into the same pattern that millions of seniors fall into. She was taking what she'd been told was good for her, in the way she'd been told to take it, without anyone ever connecting the dots between her medications and her supplements. Eleanor had been on a PPI for 11 years. She had started B12 supplementation about 4 years into that, after a routine blood test showed her levels were dropping. She was taking 1,000 micrograms of cyanocobalamin every morning, right alongside her omeprazole. Her B12 blood levels looked acceptable. Her cholesterol was managed. Her doctor had no red flags to raise. But Eleanor had been noticing something she kept brushing aside. A heaviness in her thinking. Not dementia. She was cognitively sharp, but a kind of mental fog that would settle in by mid-afternoon. She assumed it was age. She assumed it was just how 72 felt. Her niece, a physician's assistant, insisted on a full panel at a preventive health screening event. When Eleanor's homocysteine came back at 28 micromole per liter, her niece called her immediately. Eleanor told me later, "I wasn't scared. I was angry, at myself mostly, because I should have known to ask for this test. I've ordered it for patients. I never ordered it for myself." Here's what happened next. We switched her to 400 micrograms of methylcobalamin. We added a B complex with folate and B6. We adjusted the timing of her supplement away from her PPI dose. We scheduled a follow-up homocysteine test for 12 weeks out. At her 12-week check, Eleanor's homocysteine had dropped from 28 to 16. She told me the mental fog had lifted. She said she hadn't realized how heavy she'd been feeling until the heaviness started to go. She started recommending homocysteine testing to every friend over 60 she spoke to. Eleanor's story is not unusual. It is, in fact, far more common than it should be. And the reason I tell it to you is not for drama. It's because I want you to see yourself in it. Not in the danger, but in the recovery. Because the body, given the right tools and the right information, has a remarkable ability to right itself. Segment 7, your action plan. Let's close with a concrete action plan, because information without action is just anxiety. Step 1, check your medication list. Are you on metformin for blood sugar or a PPI such as omeprazole, pantoprazole, or lansoprazole for acid reflux? If yes, your B12 situation deserves a second look. Step 2, look at your B12 supplement right now. What form is it? Cyanocobalamin switched to methylcobalamin. This is the single most impactful change most of you can make today, and it costs no more than your next bottle. Step 3. Reconsider your dose. If you're taking 1,000 micrograms or more daily, discuss with your doctor whether a lower, more targeted dose of 250 to 500 micrograms of methylcobalamin might serve you better. Step 4. Add B6 and folate. A quality B complex or a supplement combining all three gives the homocysteine cycle what it needs to actually function. These are inexpensive, widely available, and genuinely important. Step 5. Request the right tests. Call your doctor's office this week. Ask for 2 specific things: a homocysteine level test and an active B12 test, not just total B12. Total B12 can appear normal when active B12 is functionally low. The distinction matters. Step 6. Have the full conversation. At your next appointment, don't let this be a sidebar. Make it the main topic. Bring a note if you need to. Say, I want to specifically review how my B12 supplementation is interacting with my current medications. That sentence gives your doctor everything they need to take you seriously and dig in. I want to say something before I close because I think it's important. You did not come to this video by accident. You came because you are the kind of person who takes your health seriously, who wants to understand, not just comply, who wants to know, not just follow instructions. That instinct is what keeps people healthy into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. And I genuinely believe that the information you now carry about homocysteine, about medication interactions, about the form and dose of B12 can make a measurable difference, not just for you, but for every person in your life who is over 60 and taking these supplements without the full picture. Share this video with one person today. One person over 60 who is on Metformin or a PPI. One person who has never had a homocysteine test. One person who deserves to know what their B12 is actually doing inside their body. That share could be the most important health action you take this week. If this video gave you something new to think about, something you hadn't considered before, drop a comment and tell me what it was. I read every single one, and your comments help me understand what topics need more attention, more clarity, more honest conversation. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that now and ring the notification bell. Every week I bring you research-backed preventive health information designed specifically for adults over 60, the kind of detail-level, mechanism-focused content that simply doesn't fit in a 15-minute doctor's appointment. You deserve to understand your own health deeply. That's what we do here. Take care of your heart. I'll see you in the next one.